So I want to welcome everyone who is just joining us to our episode of Newsroom at Home. We're focusing on avocados today. And of course, as always, if you have any questions, please place them into the Q&A. We do have a few questions to get through, but we will do our best to answer those questions that you post into the Q&A, okay? So let's go ahead and get started. We have lots to discuss. I'd like to introduce our moderator for the hour, Joan Morris. Morning, Joan.
Morning, Charnel, and welcome to everyone who's here to learn about growing avocados. I'm Joan Morris. I'm the Pets and Wildlife columnist and garden writer for the Bay Area Newsroom. I have just completed my 44th year as a paid journalist, and I've been with the newspaper for 34 years, and I've been doing Pets and Wildlife columnist for about 10 now, so time flies. Our guest today is Gary Gragg, who is one of my favorite people on this planet. He's always entertaining.
To be honest.
It's always a little dangerous. No, he's good. So Gary,
you never know what he's going to say.
And
you want to go live with Gary Gragg. You never know what he's going to say.
Welcome, and why don't you tell us some about yourself?
Well, you know, it's kind of late in the morning, and do you think that it would be, I haven't had any breakfast yet. Do you think it would be rude to your viewership if I was just kind of chomping on a little bit of avocado while we talk a little bit? I'm getting a little grumble in my tummy, and this is kind of good for the webinar too. This is, I want to tell everybody, this is look, fresh lime off your tree, close up so you can see, into your tap water, which if you're East Bay mud, it's straight from the mountains, and ice water, and your avocados. This is the breakfast of champions. This is all you need, and you'll never need to go to the store again, as long as you have water service to your house and an avocado tree. So I would share it with you, but I'm not there. But yeah, let's talk about avocados while I eat my breakfast. Is that okay, John?
Well,
just
I'm
one bite.
Very jealous.
Just one bite. Okay, I feel better now. Yeah, so my name is Gary Gragg. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming. Like I said, Joan is the best. You should read all her articles and follow her because she's the greatest. And I've known her for an awful long time. And let's see. So I grew up in the Bay Area, and I started out in Kensington. And then when I was about 4 years old, my mom was tired of the fog. So we moved out to Concord because she kept seeing oh, look, it's warm out there. And so we were the first people out there when there were still walnut groves everywhere. We moved into a place next door that had a big walnut grove, which they promptly bulldozed. And I became extremely upset about that. And I would go out and I'd break all the survey stakes every day that they left. As soon as they left the job, I would break all their survey stakes. When I was 6 years old, I'm like, they're not gonna take away my my little forest next door. And so I thought I could prevent the development, but it did turn into homes eventually. But anyway, then we were there for a little while, went to Clayton, and then finally to Lafayette, where I am now. Went to San Diego State for 4 years. This whole entire time, since I could remember, I loved palm trees and exotic plants and anything jungly. And the Bay Area had very little to provide in that sort of genre of plants. But I would see things around. I'd see an avocado tree, I'd see a citrus tree, I'd see a palm tree, I'd see a cactus. None of them were ever together in a concerted landscape. But anyway, went to San Diego State, and then I was like, boom, the whole world opened up to me. There was just exotic plants everywhere, and I was just enthralled. Didn't want to move out of there, but my high school sweetheart talked me into moving home. Before that, I was a political science major, international relations of Latin America, but very quickly found that I could earn $20 an hour cash back in 1990 by building gardens for La Jolla moms, which was incredibly fun. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to move home to the Bay Area needs someone, and I'm the chosen one to bring the San Diego landscape to the Bay Area, which is what I've done for the last, I don't know, how old am I? 30 something years. And so here we are today with just one of the components of the San Diego landscape. It's the largest avocado growing region of California, and the original avocado growing region of the world outside of habitat. So here we are. Now we all have avocados in the Bay Area, which is a much better thing. That's my story. And this avocado is really good. We have one more
So
bite.
jealous.
Yeah.
So, well, we're all here to learn how to grow avocados. So why don't you share your secret?
All right. Well, geez. This could be a really long thing. Let's start out with some intriguing things. The avocado is one of the fruits of the world that they really don't know where the native habitat is. And that is because, like, grapes, figs, pomegranate, date palms, avocados, and some other things have been manipulated by man, or humans to be specific, for so long that the wild, they don't even know the wild population it came from, which is really interesting. But they do know that these plants did start in the Mesoamerica. When the Spanish came to the islands in the West Indies, they encountered avocados there, so they called, there's three races of avocados. There's Mexican Highland, there's Guatemalan avocados, and then there's one called West Indian, which is a misnomer because there were no avocados native to the West Indies. They were all native to the continent of North America. And the West Indian types are tropical types, and those were really native. They've figured out to the lowlands of Central America and Mexico. And the Guatemalan types are mid-elevation types that grow to about 1,500 feet up to about like 7,000 feet. And then the Mexican types are the highland types that are like 4,000 feet to as much as I think like 9,000 feet cloud forest. And those are the hardiest types to cold. So that's kind of something interesting to know, the three different types. The tropical types are generally really big, but they're very bland typically. The Guatemalan types are also big typically with very thick skin, and they're fairly rich, but they're not quite as cold hardy typically as the Mexican types. The Mexican types are thin skinned, very good tasting, but more cold hardy. So most of the avocados that you'll see that you buy from the store, like Haas, Fuerte, pretty much most of the popular types that you see, like Pinkerton, they're a hybrid between Guatemalan and Mexican types. So that's kind of a fun fact. You see the combinations of things in the plant, like the Haas avocado. It's not huge, but it has a very thick skin that can be peeled easily. Thick skin is a Guatemalan attribute, and the smaller size is a Mexican attribute. It makes it hardy enough for us to grow in frosty areas that stay warmer than 25 degrees, whereas the Guatemalan types might not like that. So, but yeah, that's a good place to start to talk about like where they're native to. Well, back to being native, there was my hero. His name is Wilson Popenoe. You can look him up. And this guy worked for the Department of Agriculture of the United States government. And he was tasked with going down to Guatemala to hunt for 2 years for the best avocados he could find, and then ship them back to California to start a trade. And this he did with 2 mules, and he had a helper that he hired, and he just basically walked all through Guatemala and found all these avocados. And what he discovered was that he never could find native trees, like wild trees. There is a tree that resembles an avocado that has a really small fruit that grows up in the mountains. They think that was the original parent, but the Guatemalan history is so deep that these people have been taking these fruit and sort of selecting the best ones to eat, taking them home, and then chucking the seed out in their backyard, or maybe even planting it. And so they've been genetically selecting these things with no real intention of improving the crop. but the crop did improve over time just because they would pick the best ones. And what's interesting is in Guatemala at that time, there were no organized orchards of trees. There were only random trees in coffee plantations, especially. Coffee plantations, you need partial shading. And so the coffee owner, the plantation owners would allow bigger trees to grow amongst the coffee to give them that filtered light. And the workers would bring an avocado from wherever, have it for lunch, chuck the seed, and invariably you would get a tree that would grow. And it was always a good tree because the guys were selecting the seed from good plants. And so therefore you ended up with these really select varieties that were mostly found in coffee plantations. And one of which is a real interesting story that Wilson found. And he said he could never really find the wild avocado, only in domesticated plantings, people's houses, and mostly these coffee plantations. But one of the ones he found in the coffee plantations was the reed variety, which is a really big commercial variety in California. It's the size of a softball. It's a beautiful tree. It has the shiny, lustrous foliage. It's a semi-dwarf. It's a little bit tender to frost, so you could grow it if you stay above about 28 degrees, 27 degrees. It's not quite as hardy as a hoss, but almost. But it makes these big round fruit with thick skin, and it's just it's a gorgeous. It's probably the prettiest avocado tree there is, and the fruit is wonderful. It's bigger than a hoss. But the interesting thing about that is he actually went down there and he found this tree, and it was a juvenile tree. It was only like maybe 10 feet tall, but it was loaded full of fruit. So he took budwood, got it to grow in California. And then he went back about 3 years later. Guess what? The tree was gone. They accidentally cut it down. So here's this plant that almost didn't see the light of day. It's all over the world now. We grow it. You can buy it from us. It's the same exact plant that Wilson collected. And the whole reed trade now is reliant upon that one moment where he just happened to find that tree 2 years before they cut it down and saved it genetically. And so those are good stories, but we only have how many? We have 4 hours to talk today? Or is it 5?
Not quite.
Oh, maybe we should move on.
Let's move on.
Joan's going to keep me in check. Otherwise, I would keep talking for the entire hour. She's got a little whip. You can't see. Oh, I just felt the shock. She's got a little shock collar on me. Sorry, Joan. Oh, wait, I got it again. Sorry. Okay. What's up next, Joan? What are we doing?
Well, why don't you talk about how, if people want to grow an avocado in their backyard, how they should get started?
All right.
What do they need?
Well, first of all, you just need a little bit of dirt. You can grow avocados anywhere in the Bay Area that's below 2,000 foot elevation. Above that, it just gets too cold occasionally. But lots of people think that this is the key to growing a good avocado right here, the seed. And that's partly true. And something interesting is happening. If you grow your own avocados and they are not cold stored like most avocados today that come from Mexico, Peru, and Chile, and other places, maybe Australia occasionally. But if they cold store the avocados, the embryo dies. And a lot of times you go to sprout your avocado and it just dies, it won't sprout. But if you have your own avocados, you'll find that they're germinating inside of the avocado itself before you get in there. Here's a root that pulled off of the avocado that I'm eating here. So people think you really just need the seed. Well, that's only part of the story. The seed, if you grow an avocado from seed, it's pretty much like buying a lottery ticket. Who here has bought a lottery ticket and won $100 million? Anyone? Any viewers? You can send the message in if you have. It'd be fun to know. I have lots of avocados to sell you if that's the case. But I'm willing to bet no one that's viewing this right now has won the lottery to any measurable extent. And the same thing goes when you sprout a seed. This seed is every seed on avocado tree is going to be genetically different than any tree that has ever existed before. And so it's just like when humans are born, there might be one Michael Jordan out there, and And even Michael Jordan could go and marry the best tennis star in the world and have a kid, and they're still not going to be a Michael Jordan. So the same thing goes with avocados. You sprout avocados, they're going to be most of the time inferior than the parents. And oftentimes they won't fruit sometimes at all, or very much, or very often. And so the thing to do is to buy a grafted, to be sure about it. You can always play the lottery, because if you get one that sprouts, it's better. If you do get the Michael Jordan, you can patent that plant and then sell it to the world and get rich. But that's most likely not going to happen. But the best way to get avocado grown for the average person is to come down to Golden Gate Palms and buy a tree that's been grafted. And grafting means that we've taken the Michael Jordan of the avocados and we've spliced him on top of a vigorous seedling. The seedlings are always more vigorous than any of the grafted types. So that's a reason to that's why we put them on top of seedlings. And then then you have a variety. And not only will you have a good variety, but it'll fruit immediately. It's sexually mature. The seedlings won't fruit for a decade often, whereas the name varieties that you get on top of grafted plants have the ability to fruit right away. And that goes with the caveat that the younger the tree is and the smaller the tree is, the less fruit you want on it. You want all of the energy going to growth. So you want to cut off the fruit. If it fruits too much, you can always have 2, 3, 4, 5 fruit. Once the tree hits about 6, 7, 8 feet, you can kind of let it do its thing. But before that, you want to mitigate the energy flow in the plant, channel it to growth and not an overabundance of fruit. A tree that you can get these things to fruit in little tiny sizes, and if they do, the energy diversion from fruit to growth, from growth to fruit, can kill the tree. So that's what you want to do to start out with, is get a good grafted variety.
Okay. Well, we have a lot of questions, so maybe we'll get to those. You good for that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Let's see. Bob says, talking about the hot temperatures that we had, I bought a house back in April. It was about 4 feet tall. I found a place in the yard that it seemed to really like, and it's now over 6 feet. When we had the heat wave, a lot of leaves burned, mostly the newer growth. The trunk and branches all seem okay. Should I prune back the tips of the plant where the sunburn occurred, or let them fall off naturally?
I'm all about natural myself. So, these trees have developed adaptations to every kind of condition you can imagine. And so out in the forest, there was no one with a pruner. And so I would let the dead material on a tree, this goes for after a freeze as well, I would just let the plant do whatever it wants to do. The dead structure of the tree itself is going to partially shade that which is left underneath it, even if it's just a little bit of shade. Just power lines over your head can really change the amount of the brutal sunlight that hits things. And so just a few dead twigs on top are going to be beneficial to that tree, because it will give a little bit of sun relief, and it will just find its way and fall off on its own. If you really are, you're like, oh, I don't like how it looks, you can cut it off. But what I would do is I would cut it off at the, not back to live growth, just a little bit above live growth. And then, let the dead growth fall off on its own. So that's what I would do.
Okay. Inverlate, I believe is the name, says first time having fruit on our tree in 23 years, and the heat hit. All the fruit dried up and the limbs of the tree are sunburned. Will the tree recover?
Yes. So with a heat event like we had, let's just talk about that a little bit. I grow avocados at our ranch, and we grow them to sell and also in the ground. that's up near Vacaville in Winters, just next to Lake Berryessa. It gets incredibly hot there. It's a big weather anomaly going on there that takes a while to explain, but incredibly hot, very dry air. And so you would think the avocados wouldn't grow there at all. But if we hydrate them enough, they do fine. And we had 118 degrees 2 days in a row and over 110 for 5 days straight there. Now, the thing with heat waves is you want your tree to be as healthy as possible going into it. This is any kind of stress, heat wave, freeze, anything like that. They also need to be well watered before those events. So a well-watered tree will have lots of moisture in its tissue. The moisture in its tissue will lower the temperature of the plant. When you get burn on a plant, it's literally like the cell tissue is rupturing because it goes beyond a certain temperature amount. The one way to mitigate that during a heat wave is to go and water the trees down themselves, like during the hottest part of the day, because what you're doing is the temperature is spiking in the cells. As soon as you hit it with water, it drops. It starts spiking up again, it drops. Every time you missed it, it drops. And so just like if you were a marathon runner running down the road in 120 degrees, you saw a guy on the side of the road with a hose, you'd just be begging for the guy to spray you down. And the avocados are the same thing. When you're standing there with the hose and the avocado tree is looking at you in 118 degrees, it can't say so, but it's thinking, please spray me. Don't go away without spraying me. So that's one thing you can do if you're at home. The other thing that's really important all the time, and especially during these heat waves, and especially after the heat waves, if you have defoliation, the avocado tree has developed in Mesoamerica on, mountainous hillsides and forested conditions. The reason the tree doesn't produce any fruit when it's young is all it's concerned about is going straight up and finding the hole in the canopy above it. And that's why the seedlings are so vigorous and they grow so fast and they don't flower at all, because they know that why should I? Because bees won't even find me down here in the bottom of the forest. So it goes to that opening. Once it gets there, 10 years later or whatever it is, it's fortunate enough to make it to the top of the canopy. There's just a little hole in the canopy, typically, it occupies it. And if you think about the sun going over it, by the time the sun is setting, well, the bottom of the tree never sees any sun, it's just the top. And so the tree developed with this green skin on the stems and the trunk that is extremely susceptible to sunburn. And you'll know it's sunburn because it'll turn black. It's usually on the south or west sides of the stems. And once they turn black, they can't conduct any of their photosynthetic qualities or water and the energy flow. And so the tree slows its growth down. If you turn the stem over, you'll see it's green on the other side, and that side is perfectly intact. So how do you mitigate that kind of damage for it? And we're taking these trees and we're not putting them in the bottom of a forest with a little hole 30 feet up they're going to go to. We're putting them out in the open where they have to fend for themselves and have sunlight around them all the time, sometimes 118 degrees. So how to make the tree deal with that? Well, you basically paint all of the trunk and green stems of the tree white with 30% latex white paint, latex based, and the remainder of water. And you paint it on there any way you can, wherever you can, especially where it looks like the sun's going to beam through and hit it. And that becomes especially important, if not critically important, after a big heat wave like we had, because often you have burned foliage, it falls off, and then you have exposure to sunlight underneath, and then it's really susceptible to sunburn. So that's what, misting, well-watered trees ahead of time, and then also proactively and reactively painting with white paint. That's what you need to do.
Okay. Michael asks, can I have this?
I have a picture of that. Let me show you a picture.
Okay.
Let me show you a picture. We have pictures lined up for everybody. You don't want to look at me. It gets tired of looking at me. I can share my screen. I'm so hip. I know how this works now. Joan taught me everything I know about Zoom today. All right, now I've got my screen shared with y'all, and we're going to go on my website. I knew this would come up, and here is a tree, a young baby tree that doesn't have a lot of leaves. You can see the sun would just blast this thing, and so it's painted white. And this is in a really hot inland San Diego growing region. This is a friend of mine's ranch. He has 300 acres of trees, and he taught a lot. Thomas Royden, give a shout out to my buddy out there. I'll have to send this recording to him. But anyway, yeah, this is one of his trees, and this is a young Haas avocado he's establishing in his grove. You see there's a bigger one behind it. And but that's how you want to paint these trees, anywhere you can, all the way up until they get really big and they're leafed out, and then it's better after that point. Yeah. So there's lots of other things to see, I guess we could see, but what next, Joan? I'll find a visual aid for whatever you say.
Michael asks, can I have just a single tree in my yard to get fruit, or must I have 2 or more for pollination?
I don't have a visual aid for that, but I'll just talk. So we'll throw you some other visual aids while we talk. This is our website. You should go to our website if you're into avocados. Oh, here's a great visual aid right here. This is my favorite. Oh no, am I like getting lost on my own website? There she is. This is my favorite girlfriend here. I'm not even sure where. She's obviously from Southern California, obviously long ago. And this was an avocado festival in Fallbrook, like 80 years ago or something. And so this is our goal here. And to answer the question, to get to the goal of fruiting on your trees, the avocado tree is it does have male and female flowers on every single plant. However, Darwinism has acted in such a way, evolution, that it really doesn't want it pollinating with itself, because it wants to have new genes introduced into the gene pool. And so it discourages self-pollination. And so what that means in fewer words is that there's 2 types of avocados. There's A flowering types and B flowering types. They don't match up their male and female flowers at the same time. So typically, and so one tree can be self-fruitful, but that only is because there's ants or there's leftover pollen around when the female flowers open up and they're receptive. The male flowers are already closed, but there's still kind of pollen around that can be moved around. So you do get some fruit set, but to heighten the fruit set, you want to get an opposite flowering type. Like I said, there's A types and B types. And on our website, we tell you which is which. And so in an ideal world, you will have one of each at minimum to encourage that enhanced pollination to get you to what we see here with this big branch of fruit.
Okay. Someone else asks, recently moved an avocado plant in a pot from inside to outside in the ground. The leaves turn brown and droopy. What can I do?
Well, whenever you move a plant from interior to exterior, you really need to do it in stages. You can't put it out in sunlight right away because the cell tissues of the plant are not adapted for that. It's adapted for interior light conditions, which is highly diffused with very little light. You take it outside, put it in full sun with highlight and direct sunlight, it'll do bad things. So you really need to move the plant gradually to brighter and brighter conditions, and then finally plant, or maybe shade it for a while, plant it in the ground, shade it for a while, then slowly take off the shade over time. Or maybe do it in midwinter, when the sunlight's not as intense or days are as long, to adapt it to that new outside condition. So it's really, that's really what needs to happen there.
Okay. Larissa asks, what about growing avocados from seed? Specifically growing seeds in water versus dirt. Is one better? Or should you just buy a tree from a grower?
being a grower who sells trees, I must say that no, it's definitely better to buy one from a grower because you know what you're going to get. You're going to get a grafted variety. The other thing that's important to know is we didn't learn this until there was a lot of, I basically failed a lot to know what I know. And now I know how to do everything the right way. And one of the ways to do the things the right way is we would buy, when we first started selling avocado trees, I basically wrote an article for Joan once, like way back in 2007 or something. And then I didn't even think about it. We sold palm trees mainly, but I'm like, oh, everybody needs to know about avocados because I'm having all this success growing avocados and the world needs to know. In fact, everyone out there needs to go to my YouTube channel. It's called True Plant Stories. And you need to find my video called Gary's Blood Avocado Rant. And it's very important that you watch this because after you watch this video, you will never eat a store-bought avocado again without feeling enormous guilt, knowing you could grow your avocado in your backyard and to help save the world with the rest of us. So I want to make sure that you go watch that specific. I have like 100 and something avocado videos, but watch that one. If you only watch one, watch that one. But what was the question, Joan? Seed.
Can you grow from seed?
Yeah.
And if you do, should you do it in water or dirt?
Oh, well, yeah. Let's finish buy from a grower first. So we learned through trial and error. We bought some trees. So when we wrote this article for Joan, I was like, well, maybe you got all these calls. Everybody wants avocado trees. So let's order some. So we ordered some from some place I knew of. And then we had lots of people calling us back going, these things are dying. And we just sold little 5-gallon plants. And it turns out they were very weakly grown. They were shade house grown plants. Remember what I talked about where you have to acclimate to outside? Well, these were only semi-acclimated, it turns out. And they are also very small. So the ones we sell are grown like 5 feet apart. I may even have an image here available to me for, no, I don't see it. It's not there. But anyway, we grow these trees about like 8, 9, 10 feet apart from each other. They have full sunlight on all sides. They have wind flow, and we get to a really dense tree. And so it really matters as to the quality of the tree you buy, especially when putting it in Northern California, where things are a little bit tougher than Southern California to get it going. And our trees are very dense because we grow them very well and spread them out, lots of sunlight, lots of wind to really toughen them up. A tree that is shade grown is going to be twice as tall for the same caliper trunk as a tree that's grown in full, like exposed sun inland conditions like ours. So back to yeah, it's best to get one from a grower, get a big head start, you get a known variety. A seedling is going to yield a less than Michael Jordan product, if any, and it's going to take you years and years of time and effort to grow that plant. But it's still fun growing the cute little seeds. I mean, I do it, of course I graft on top, which is no easy task. We probably only have a 50% take rate when we graft these plants. But the seedlings are so cute. Every time you open them up, it's like fun to grow them. And you can grow them any which way. You can stick it straight in the ground, just like they did in the coffee plantations of Guatemala. They just chucked the seed, and that seed landed in a little shady spot, and then boom, it sprouted and everything, and it just went to town. Now you could also grow it in water, as long as half the seed is above the water and it's not completely immersed. It'll live off its own nutrients in water for quite a while. There's a lot of nutrients in the seed of an avocado to get it going, but ultimately it should be planted out in dirt. But really it should just be for a fun experiment, or to have a fun little house plant. And if you could grow that thing up after 2 or 3 years and then graft a known variety on top of it, which is kind of fun, but frustrating because it often doesn't work. Or you can just come on down to Golden Gate Farms and buy a big tree and have avocados within 2 years, just like this lady here in the photo.
Okay, Barbara from Concord says that she started a tree from seed and it's now in an outside pot. Is it a good idea to place my newly potted avocado tree in a 2 by 2 by 6 high greenhouse this winter to protect it from the cold. Says, my thought is I'll leave the front panel of the small greenhouse open for ventilation.
That's definitely the safer thing to do. It's all a matter of, a roll of the dice as to whether we have a harsh freeze or not. My first year of landscaping up here in the Bay Area, actually, no, the first winter after my first year of landscaping up here in the Bay Area, it was my junior year in college, and I came home and did a couple tropical landscapes for people, thinking I was doing such a great thing. And then lo and behold, we had the worst freeze that California's ever experienced. It was, I think, 14 degrees in Danville. It was 18 in Concord. It was 16 in Lafayette. And the freeze was here for a couple of days, and then it went away and it came back. It wasn't quite as bad the second time, but it finished everything off that didn't die. So if we were to have something like that, then having your tree in your greenhouse would be a very, very intelligent thing to do. But as it is with what I see happening with global warming, after that happened, I was like, okay, I have to plant plants for everybody that can tolerate 14 degrees. That's all we could plant. Well, that was untrue, and I got really conservative for years, and then lo and behold, that kind of freeze never came back. 2007, we had a little bit of a freeze. It wasn't anywhere near that cold, and so ever since we've had mild weather, relatively speaking, and it seems that our freezes come from the Arctic. The Arctic is the fastest warming place on Earth. A lot of the ice is disappearing. It'll probably all be gone in 20 years. And it's going to be ocean. So then the weather systems that emanate there, and when the jet stream comes straight down to us, it's most likely to be less cold than it used to be, is my theory. It's like an old refrigerator door being opened rather than a brand new one, which, is tragic for the Earth, but good if you're growing avocados here. So there is a bright side to global warming sometimes, even though no one wants to really, frame it that way. But yeah, so we probably shouldn't have any freezes like we had then, but it is always better to be rather safe than sorry. And there's all kinds of ways you can protect your tree. Putting it in a greenhouse is one thing. If the tree's in the ground, you can get white protection, frost protection cloth, and drape it all over the tree. If you can also put big jugs of water underneath the tree and anywhere around it, and the water will find the median temperature of the 24-hour period. And when it's 20 degrees out, the water will be 40 degrees and it'll be emanating relative heat to the plant. And then during the day when it's 50 degrees, it'll be warming the water up for the cold nighttime later. So it therefore moderates the climate. So, and then you can put light bulbs out there. You can do all kinds of things to help mitigate the temperatures. But it's best to plant a tree that's probably hardy enough for your garden for you to do nothing. And once the tree is big, then the worst that can happen to a really big tree during even a horrible freeze is the top couple of feet will just fry back and die and look dead. And then come May and June, it'll sprout out on its own and all will be good again.
Great. Thomas asks, can you top an avocado tree or will it stop production?
Avocado trees, I have a great video for this on the YouTube channel. And I think I forget what it's called. It's going to be a needle in the haystack to find, unless I can tell you what it's called. But if you can find it, it talks about, you should search my channel for stumping of avocado trees. And what that is in the groves, these trees will get really big. And once they get really tall and big, two things happen. One, they're harder to pick because you got to go way up there and get the fruit. The other thing that'll happen is that as the tree gets taller and the extremities where the plant is exposed to sunlight and bees, where it'll be pollinated and fruit, is so far away from the root system. And it's such a vertical draw to get all the nutrients up from the roots that the fruit will tend to be smaller and not as marketable. So what do you do with your avocado grove when that happens to you 25 years after planting? Well, you get your chainsaw out and you cut the whole thing down to a stump, but you must obey the graft line where you have the rootstock beneath it and you have the good variety on top. Do not cut your tree down below that point, because if you do, you're going to get the rootstock to come back and not the top variety. And also, when you do that, you might get sprouts from the root stock, and you want to cut those off and let the top, the desirable tree, recover, and it'll recover with bravado super fast because it has very little tree to support and a massive root system. And so the question was, can I top my avocado tree? Not only can you top your avocado tree, you can cut that thing all the way to the ground and start over again. And so, and that's a common practice in orchards. So it's a pretty incredible process. And it really does rejuvenate the trees. So people think, oh, well, my avocado's going to get too big, Gary. What do I do? I can't have a tree that big. And I'm like, well, just cut the thing down, whatever size you want, whenever you want. And you will lose a year of crop when you do that. You might want to cut down half the tree one year and half the tree the next year. Otherwise, you might starve. And we don't want that. So yeah, so you can prune avocado trees any which way as long as you're above the graft line. And if you, caveat, when you do that, remember we talked about what happens when the sun hits the bark of an avocado tree? Bad things happen. So what do? You gotta, ideally get a tree sealer for the top. They sell tree sealer at nurseries other than mine. Can't claim to cover you on that one, but Home Depot has it. And then you want to paint the bark white to reflect the sun until that thing is vigorous again.
That's really interesting. Suzanne asks, there are many microclimates in the Bay Area. How can I know what will grow well in my neighborhood?
Great question. That's like my obsession. So since I can remember, I always wonder, like, well, how come you see bougainvillea here and no bougainvillea there? How come you see a king palm here but not there? All in the Bay Area here, before I knew anything about microclimates. The Bay Area is the second most complex microclimate in the world. And that is only second to the southern tip of South Africa, where they have a very similar maritime climate with a lot of similar topography that allows air intrusion into the inland areas, which then dictates climate. But in addition to that, we have a cold ocean off of our shore. They have a cold ocean in the Atlantic and a warm tropical ocean in the Indian. And so it depends on the weather coming from which direction at any one moment that can, dictate whether it's totally tropical or very frigidly cold. And, so that's a whole nother story. But we're back to microclimates. So we have this amazing microclimate in the Bay Area, and it's incredibly varied. The way to figure out what you can get away with, I remember as a kid, when I was like 13, 14 years old, we had a plant called Echium fastuosum, the pride of Madeira, a big blue flowering plant. But it's a plant that would only grow up on the hilltops in Lafayette, where we lived. And as soon as you got down to the bottom of the hill, it would naturalize all over the hill. And so down at the bottom, it just didn't exist. And I finally found out through a friend of mine who explained the whole thing to me, the late, great Lee Anderson. Some people may know that name. He was a legendary botanist in Orinda, good buddy of mine. He that I befriended at a young age, who bestowed a lot of information to me. But he's like, yeah, cold air is heavy. It sinks to the bottom of these valleys, and it'll get way colder down there, and it precludes growing a lot of plants. And it just depends on where you are, how steep the valleys are, how tight the pockets are, and that sort of thing. So you can't just assume because Home Depot sells a plant, it's going to grow in your garden, because they sell the same plants from San Diego all the way to Redding. And of course, if it dies, you bring it back. But anyway, and their avocados are terrible. They're little shade grown things. You don't want to buy them there, unless you want years of toil to get it to go. But anyway, you basically need to go around your neighborhood very close to where you live and look at what's thriving year after year. If you see lantana growing out in the open, well, it probably stays above 24 degrees. If you see bougainvillea, probably stays above 26. If you see other avocado trees, it's warm enough. If you see, I mean, there's places we sell mango trees too. That's my new fetish. And those will grow in the Bay Area under the right conditions, but they're a little bit more specific to climate than avocados are. But if you see a mango tree growing in your neighborhood, that means you can grow anything. So you really need to be cognizant of what's growing around you and what the temperature tolerances are of those particular plants, which will lend you insight to what you can get away with on your property. And even on your property, you might have varying climate zones. The south side of your house is going to be much more warm for subtropical plants than the north side, unless you're growing tree ferns, you know, that like the shade on the north side. But yeah, even here where I am in Lafayette right now, I'm at 630-foot elevation in the hills of Lafayette. And my uncle lives, the great Ron Lutzko, people might know, he's a pretty well-known landscape architect. He lives at the bottom of the hill, only a half-mile away as the crow flies. I can grow mangoes here. He can't even grow an avocado where he is. Well, he could if you planted the cold hardy varieties, but it freezes every year down there really hard. And I'll drive down the bottom of the hill, you know, often in the wintertime, and it'll be balmy at my house. It'll be frigid down there. It'll be a 10, 12 degree difference. There'll be frost in all the homes down there, and there'll be none on top of the hill. So you really need to learn your microclimate where you are, and that'll tell you what you can get away with.
So when they come to your nursery, do you have like a list that shows how cold or?
Yeah. For avocados, we have a web page. It's at goldengatepalms.com, and you go under the plant section, and we can even show it. Watch, look how nifty I am. Let's see. Well, we're here already. Here we are. We have all these pictures of these varieties. You can click on them, and we'll tell you about what they do. And we even have more varieties than we show, actually. But here's our chart right here. That it's our availability. But when you click on some of these, this is a big mup avocado. It's my daughter, and tells you how hardy they are, how big they are. This one we don't have yet. That one's in development. And this is an avocado. It's a great story. I found this thing growing in East Palo Alto on this huge, humongous tree. And I probably have pictures of it here. And there it is. And it was one of the bigger avocados. It's one of the Guatemalan types that typically you wouldn't be able to find growing in the Bay Area. And it even dwarfs the size of a VW bus. I can't believe the suspension even could take the weight of this avocado on it. And a bug, same thing. But yeah, we were selling these things. We were harvesting these things from the parent tree, and it had no name, this plant. And so I named it after my daughter, Muppy, and we called it the Big Mupp, like the Big Mac. And there she is again. But this tree is native to, well, it was from East Palo Alto. When I produced a few of these from grafts. When I went back and I talked a grower into producing a whole bunch of them, I went back to the tree, and it had been chopped down several days before. And the owners told me they were going to do that. They're going to develop some condos there to do whatever I could to like get it going. But I didn't know they were going to kill it that quickly. And so we're just now catching up on our production. We had to grow a couple trees out, then get enough for grafting material. And then now we are growing that one on. So this is a Bay Area born and bred, big Guatemalan type. That's pretty darn cold hardy, because it got really cold in that freeze down there in 1990, and it did fine. Another one that we're growing is this one here, which is even bigger. And this tree is from a tree near my nursery in Richmond. It's just a massive fruit. It's a cannonball size. Here they are here on my counter. This is another Bay Area. Look at the softball compared to the fruit. It's how big it is. Another big Guatemalan type that normally wouldn't be cold hardy, that was grown from a seed by a woman in Richmond, and we are trying to develop that plant now. And again, I've forgotten the original question, Joan.
About microclimate.
Yeah.
I
Well, yeah.
think
So
yeah.
that's the crazy part. Like, there's all these microclimates all around the Bay Area, and um, you just need to figure out which one you're in. I mean, if you're on top of Mount Diablo, you're not going to be able to grow an avocado tree. I'm very sorry, unless you build a greenhouse. But if you're just about anywhere else, even halfway up Mount Diablo, you can grow them, and anywhere else. But here's a, we talk about cold hardy varieties. These are 3 cold hardy varieties here. The one on the right, that is a bacon avocado. The one here in the middle is a fuerte. And the one to the left is a Jim bacon, which is they're all smooth skin. The Jim bacon, these are all cold hardy varieties. The fuerte is the most tender of the 3. It's hardy to about 24 degrees. The bacon is hardy to 22, 23. The Jim bacon is hardy to 21, 22. So these are really good varieties you can grow in even the colder areas of the Bay Area, short of the top of Mount Diablo or the top of Mount Tam, the highest points, or Mount Hamilton. But just about anywhere else, 2,000 foot below, you should be able to grow these 3 varieties here. And also, if we can find, this is not Mexicola, but Mexicola looks quite a bit like that. Mexicola is the most cold hardy avocado we sell. See if I can navigate my own website. You think I can? Do you think I can? I don't know. Maybe not. I'm stuck in this little section. But anyway, oh wait, here, we'll go back to, well, we'll find it. These are all different varieties, but Mexicola is especially cold hardy to 18 degrees, has a beautiful black fruit. There it is. These are fruit that I grew at my place in Lafayette. I'm a much younger buck than I am now there. But it has a very thin skin that you can eat. The skin tastes like anise. Is it anise or anise? We talked about anise. None of the 2. Yeah. I'm learning how to talk from Joan. She coaches me on a lot of things. And so it's an anise flavored skin on this type of avocado. It's so thin you could just chop it up. You don't even have to skin the thing. And this is the Mexicola Grande variety. There's another one, see if we get lucky and find it, called there it is, Mexicola. That's half the size. It produces just as much fruit on the tree in a poundage sense. But the fun thing about the Mexicola, they're both hardy to 18 degrees. You can grow them just about anywhere in the Bay Area. Fun thing about the small one is that it's really, you can utilize it on your crackers. You just cut the thing in half, don't have to skin it or anything, put it right on your cracker and you're eating. Yeah, you don't have to, I mean, sometimes skinning the avocados is kind of a hassle. And the skin tastes, like I said, anise flavored. And it's really, really good and spicy. And the smaller of the 2 has more pungent flavor in the avocado than the larger ones. Another fun video you might want to watch is an avocado video that I have called Size Matters. And that's on there as well. And it's all about this little tiny avocado that is just a wonderful fruit. And people think, oh, I want the big one because it's big. It's like, well, no. This thing has all kinds of attributes you can use. And the other thing that's nice about a smaller avocado like this is that you don't get stuck with half an avocado, to put back in your fridge, which isn't as good the next day as it was the first day. So this thing here, it's a more portion size. And so, you use as many as you want, and then you never have a half left over. So that's the most cold-hardy type there. You go with the Mexicola. Mexicola is an A flowering type, Mexicola or Mexicola Grande. And then you go with a bacon B flowering type. That's the best combination of trees you can have for colder areas of the Bay Area. The 2 most cold hardy varieties, A variety and a B variety. And the Mexicola will fruit from August through November, and the bacon will fruit from about February 1st through July 1st. So just those 2 trees, you can have a lot of avocados all year long.
Greg says, my question is about watering frequency. We live in San Jose, and as you may know, our soil is primarily clay loam, and as such, we have done much soil amendment, including sand, peat, moss, citrus amendment, etc. My wife and I planted a Mexicola avocado in May and had done what we thought was sufficient job of prepping the soil below the root ball. 5-gallon plant and planted in a 5-foot wide and 4.5 feet tiered hole. It died within 90 days, and we thought it might have been due to lack of watering. How do we best manage watering in San Jose?
Well, San Jose is for watering is the same as everywhere else. These avocado trees, it sounds like the soil prep was great. They did buy a 5-gallon plant. And as I mentioned earlier, we learned that that's not what you want to do. You want to start out with a 15-gallon or larger for critical mass. I think if I could navigate my website, which maybe not, I'm not sure how to do it in this format here, but actually I could just go right back to the website and do it all over again, start over. With the size of the avocado tree to begin with is really critical here that we found. And you need to start out with something big and bulky to really give the tree a good chance of survival here. And so here's some example trees that we sell. There's a little 5-gallon. We just stopped selling these 5 gallons because they're just so little. The attrition rate was just unacceptable. And we didn't like getting all the hate mail. So this was a 5-gallon larger plant that we sold that did a little bit better. But really what you want to start out with is a 15-gallon plant in Northern California. It's been grown, really well. It's toughened up. Then if you really want to go to town, you can get these really giant 24-inch boxes, which oftentimes have avocados on them right away. But I'll show you sometimes with the 15-gallon size, we could get to a tree that's really big for its size. Like here, this is the biggest you could ever expect from a 15-gallon size plant. It just shows whatever the citrus backfill that we use. We typically, when we plant a tree, you want to mound the tree up a little bit. These trees like really good drainage. They like a lot of aeration on their soil. They're from a really loose volcanic mix in the mountains of Mesoamerica, typically volcanic. They also have a heavy forest litter decomposing above them. You always want to leave the leaves of your avocado tree to drop right where the avocado is. Decomposing leaves of an avocado tree will have the property of, they have a chemical exchange that they do where as they decompose, they release a chemical that prevents root rot on the tree, or it inhibits root rot. So that's really important. So your avocado leaves are gold, just leave them there. But we also, to replicate the forest floor of avocado habitat, we do recommend a big bag of composted bark. Well, here it is there, that bark right there. And then we mix 50-50 with citrus and palm planting mix that we have to give the roots a really good chance in the soil. It has a lot of really good organic nutrients in it. But then with the bark on top, you can use any bark. You could use bark from the guys that dump it for free in front of your house that are trimming trees down the street. That stuff is marvelous. It's just as good as the pretty stuff we sell in the bag. So, and you use tons of it, like 6 inches of it all around the tree. Just don't put it on the trunk of the tree. As far as watering goes, these trees are, native to this habitat where they get a little bit of cloud action on them. They'll have big outbursts of rain, but the water does drain away really quickly because of the nature of the soil where they're native at. So you want to replicate that. The plant can store a lot of water in its tissue. You should let the roots dry out a fair amount, probably more so than you think, and then soak the tree really well. If you keep it constantly soaked, you're going to suffocate it and it's going to die. And the smaller the tree is to start with, the more likely it's going to be susceptible to conditions like that where it could die of waterlogging. The avocado trees actually experience a 3-month dry period. I've been dry farming my established avocado trees in Lafayette for like 3 or 4 years because the deer wrecked the drip system. So I turned it off, haven't gotten out there to fix it. The trees are doing okay. They're fruiting. They're not as healthy as they would be if I watered them and fertilized them, but it does show that you can dry farm them, and erring on the side of dryness might be more healthy than soaking them like crazy. So I'd say, like, twice a week during hot weather, once a week during mild weather, 3, 4, 5 gallons for a younger tree to saturate not only the root ball, but all the soil around it to encourage the roots to shoot out into that moist soil. But then let it dry out a little bit before you water it again to avoid root rot.
Okay, well, we're almost out of time, but I'm going to sneak in one more quick question. How do you tell when your avocado is ripe and it needs to be picked?
That's a great 20-minute answer question. All right, let's go. Come on, everyone's got another 20 minutes. Let's do it. All right. So we all know we want to eat avocados when they're soft. Well, okay. So back to when do you pick the avocado? We have a picking chart on our website, which is different. If you read a lot of literature, all the literature is based on Southern California perspective. So our ripening is typically later than theirs on a lot of these trees. And our trees, our fruit will actually hang on trees longer than Southern California fruit because it's more mild up here. It's the overall temperature for a longer period of time, which, pushes the plant into its holding period and how long it will hold. And it's different kind of everywhere. It's very different at my ranch in winters, where it's very hot early in spring and hot throughout the summer, than it is here in coastal Lafayette or semi-coastal Lafayette. So ultimately, you're going to need to figure this out on your own for your own particular trees on your property. But generally, we have a chart that shows about when you should pick them. But when you do finally get your tree, just know that people see a full-size avocado on their tree, like, oh, it's ready to go. They pick it, and then they put it on their counter, and it shrinks and it becomes rubbery, and it's nasty, and you can't even eat it. And they were like, well, my avocados, they're supposed to be good, but they're not. Well, it's not the fault of the avocado. It's the fault of the picker and the time that they picked the fruit. So what you need to do, like a Haas avocado grown in the Bay Area, it's going to flower in March, April, and May. It's going to take a whole year until the following May before that fruit's going to be good to eat. It'll be fully sized in 6 months. So it'll be deceiving. So don't pick that fruit. Wait until the following May. In fact, you have to wait until you see little avocados for the next year next to the big avocados for the current year. And then you're going to pick that fruit. You're going to put it on your counter. It's not going to ripen in 3 days like the ones from the store you bought. Those things were shipped on boats, and they've been in process for quite a while before they get to you. It's going to take like 7 to 10 to maybe even 14 days to ripen an avocado from the tree you have at home. So you really have to plan your crop. You're going to have a big guacamole party for Super Bowl. Well, probably about like the second week of April or January, better start picking your fruit to get ready, or else you're gonna have lots of avocados you can't eat when all your friends come. So what you want to do is you want to pick your fruit. You want to wait. You want to see if you want to pick one fruit, see if that fruit ripens up, see if it's good. If it is, then if it shrivels up, you didn't wait long enough. Wait another 2 weeks, pick another one, do the same experiment. If that one's good, then you're like, okay, I just established the earliest pick time on my particular tree for this particular variety where I live. And then you also want to do it on the other end. You want to see how long those things will hold on the tree. I've had fruit on little avocado, Wirtz variety, which is a dwarf variety, hang on my tree in Lafayette for over a year. From for 2 years, 2.5 years, because it got on the tree like in year one as a little baby, little fruit. Then it took until the following May, 13 months later, to ripen enough to eat it. Then I left them on the tree, because I had so many, until the following May, when I had 2 crops. I had little tiny ones, green ones from that year, and then the older, more dull ones. They'll be more dull when they're ripe. They won't be shiny green. We're still on the tree from 2 years earlier, and I let those sit on the tree for another 2 or 3 months until they all fell off. And so some of these ones, you can have like one tree of avocados all year, and the longer they sit on the tree, the richer they get, the more fat they build up into the flesh of the plant. But so you can do this experiment when you have enough avocados where you pick it, see if it ripens well enough. let it sit on the tree, see how long it'll sit on the tree. Then you've established your picking period. Now, the earliest one is when it flowers and fruits in April. The Mexicola will be ripe 6 months later in August, September. And then it'll be good and it'll hang on the tree until like sometime in November, early December. That's the fastest one. The slowest one is this big giant one that I got. The Guatemalan types are extremely slow. They'll take 15 months to ripen, but then they'll hang on the tree for like another year after that. So it's all about establishing what variety is, in your unique climate, what your pick period is going to be. And that's the short answer.
Okay. Well, if you can stop sharing your screen.
All right. Let's see if we can figure that one out. Oh, yeah, I got it right there. Boom.
And I want to thank you so much for coming today. I learned a lot. I now even more want to go and get an avocado tree or two. And I want to thank everyone who tuned in today.